It's the place to be, PTV Park on KCET.
What's the story, amigos? This is Kino with some cool stories for today's story time.
In our first story, 3 baby owls wonder what happened to their mommy.
I think she's gone hunting, said Sarah. To get us our food, said Percy. I want my mommy, said Bill.
It's double trouble when a magical pot produces 2 of everything.
Naturally, he took hold of the ankles and pulled. Out came a second person.
Then Patricia Richardson reads a story about a little bird in search of a mother.
Oh, Mrs. Giraffe, he cried. You are yellow, just like me. Are you my mother?
Major funding for Storytime is made possible by a grant from Helen and Peter Bing, so that families everywhere can share the joy of reading with their children. Additional funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, by the annual financial support from viewers like you, and by the National Endowment for Children's Educational Television. Sarah and Percy and Bill. They lived in a hole in the trunk of a tree with their owl mother. The hole had 3 leaves and owl.
Oh, hi, Kino. You're earlier than usual today.
Yeah.
Is something wrong?
No.
Really?
Sure. Everything's fine.
So how come you're so early today?
Well, my mom and dad had to go away on a trip, so I'm staying with my Aunt Isabel for 3 nights.
So she brought you here?
Yeah. She wanted to go to the shoe store, and I didn't want to do that, so here I am.
Well, you and your Aunt Isabel are great friends, aren't you?
Oh, sure. She's funny. She can wiggle her ears, and she makes me mashed potatoes and oatmeal cookies with raisins, and she has 2 cats and a special drawer full of toys for me to play with.
That sounds terrific.
Uh-huh.
But you still miss your mom and dad, don't you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm too old for that.
Well, I was just reading this letter from my daughter, Susana. She lives far, far away, and I miss her very, very much. I don't think I'll ever be too old to miss Susana.
You won't?
No, never. She's always in my heart. And you know, I think your mom and dad miss you right now just as much as you miss them.
You think so?
I know so.
You know, my sister and I heard what you were saying, and we have a book we think you really like. My mom read it to us once when she was going away on a trip.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Would you like to hear it?
Well, sure.
Okay. It's called Owl Babies, and it's written by Martin Waddell and illustrated by Patrick Benson. Once there were 3 baby owls, Sarah and Percy and Bill. They lived in a hole in the trunk of a tree with their owl mother. The hole had twigs and leaves and owl feathers in it. It was their house. One night, they woke up and their owl mother was gone. Where's Mommy? Said Sarah. Oh my goodness, said Percy. I want my Mommy, said Bill. The baby owls thought, all owls think a lot. I think she's gone hunting, said Sarah. to get us our food, said Percy. I want my mommy, said Bill. But the owl mother didn't come. The baby owls came out of their house and they sat on a tree and waited. A big branch for Sarah, a small branch for Percy, and an old piece of ivy for Bill. She'll be back, said Sarah. Back soon, said Percy. I want my mommy, said Bill. It was dark in the woods, and they had to be brave, for things moved all around them. She'll bring us mice and things that are nice, said Sarah. I suppose so, said Percy. I want my mommy, said Bill. They sat and they thought. All owls think a lot. I think we should all sit on my branch, said Sarah. And they did, all three together. Suppose she got lost, said Sarah. Or a fox got her, said Percy. I want my mommy, said Bill. And the baby owls closed their owl eyes and wished their owl mother would come. And she came. Soft and silent, she swooped through the trees to Sarah and Percy and Bill. Mommy, they cried, and they flapped and they danced and they bounced up and down on their branch. What's all the fuss? Their owl mother asked. You knew I'd come back. The baby owls thought. All owls think a lot. I knew it, said Sarah. And I knew it, said Percy. I love my mommy, said Bill.
Oh, that was a wonderful story, Alina.
I loved it when my mom read it to me. It made me feel better about her trip. How about you, Kino?
Oh, yep. I feel a lot better. My mom will be back soon, and so will my dad. And meanwhile, I can pig out on mashed potatoes and oatmeal cookies with raisins.
Right.
Yeah. Kino, that's funny.
You know what else I can do? I can play with Aunt Isabel's cats and also her special drawer full of toys.
Oh, right again.
Glad I thought of that. But you know, I think I feel even better after another story.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah.
Well, I see Kelly's here, so why don't we go over and ask her to read to us? Come on.
Oh, yeah. Come on.
Hi, Kelly. Hi, Desmond.
Hey, hi, everybody. Hi, Desmond.
Hi.
You know, Kino's mom and dad are away on a trip and he misses them. So we just read the most wonderful story about three little owls who miss their mom, too.
Except I'm not little. But I still miss my mom and dad, which is okay because Lucy misses Susanna. That's her daughter.
Well, here's a funny idea. What do you think it would be like to have two moms and two dads? So when one mom and dad were away, you still have another mom and dad.
You mean another mom and dad exactly the same as mom and dad?
Exactly the same.
Wow, that could get confusing. But maybe it'd be great. maybe I get twice as much pizza because I could ask Mom number 1 for pizza for breakfast, and Mom number 2 for pizza for lunch, and Dad number 1 for pizza for dinner, and Dad number 2 for...
Well, I brought a story about what it would be like to have 2 of everything. Shall we find out?
Yeah, let's.
Okay, here we go. It's a story, and it's called 2 of Everything, and it was written by Lily Toy Hong. Once, long ago, in a humble little hut, lived Mr. Hack-Tack and his wife, Mrs. Hack-Tack. They were old and very poor. What little they ate came from their tiny garden. In a lucky year, when the harvest was plentiful, Mr. Hack-Tack had a little extra to take to the village. There, he traded turnips, potatoes, and other vegetables for clothing, lamp oil, and fresh seeds. One spring morning, when Mr. Hack-Tack was digging in his garden, his shovel struck something hard. Puzzled, he dug deeper into the dark ground until he came upon an ancient pot made of brass. How odd, said Mr. Hack-Tack to himself. To think I have been digging here all these years and never came upon this pot before. I will take it home. Maybe Mrs. Hack-Tack can find some use for it. The pot was big and heavy for old Mr. Hack-Tack. As he stumbled along, his purse, which contained his last 5 gold coins, fell to the ground. He tossed it into the pot for safekeeping and staggered home. His wife greeted him at the door. Dear husband, what a strange pot. Mr. Hack-Tack explained how he found the pot. I wonder what we can do with it, said Mrs. Hack-Tack. It's too large to cook in and too small to bathe in. As Mrs. Hack-Tack leaned over to peer into the pot, her hairpin, the only one she owned, fell in. She felt around in the pot, and suddenly her eyes grew round with surprise. Look, she shouted. I pulled out 2 hairpins, exactly alike, and 2 purses, too. Sure enough, the purses were identical, and so were the hairpins. Inside each purse were 5 gold coins. Mr. Hack-Tack was so excited he jumped up and down. Let's put my winter coat inside the pot. If we're lucky again, the pot will make 2 coats. And then we can both stay warm. So into the pot went 1 coat, and out came 2 coats. They began to search the house and quickly put more things into the magical pot. If we only had some meat, wished Mr. Hack-Tack, or fresh fruit, or 1 delicious sweet cake. Mrs. Hack-Tack smiled. I know how we can get anything we want, she said. She put their 10 coins into 1 purse and threw it into the pot. She pulled out 2 purses with 10 coins in each. What a clever wife I have, cried Mr. Hack-Tack. Each time we do this, we will have twice as much money as before. The Hack-Tacks worked late into the night, filling and emptying the pot until the floor was covered with coins. Morning came, and off went Mr. Hack-Tack with a long list of things to buy in the village. Instead of vegetables, his basket was full of gold coins. Mrs. Hack-Tack finished all of her chores and sat down to enjoy a cup of tea. She sipped her tea and admired the brass pot. Then, with a grateful heart, she knelt and embraced it. Dear pot, I do not know where you came from, but you are my best friend. She stooped over the pot to look inside. that very moment, Mr. Hack-Tack returned. His arms were so full of packages, he had to kick the door open. Bang! Mrs. Hack-Tack was so startled, she lost her balance and fell head first into the pot. Mr. Hack-Tack ran over and grabbed his wife's legs. He pulled and tugged until she slid out onto the floor. But when he looked again at the pot, he gasped. 2 more legs were sticking out of it.
Whoa.
Naturally, he took hold of the ankles and pulled. Out came a second person. She looked exactly like his wife. The new Mrs. Hack-Tack sat silently on the floor, looking lost. But the first Mrs. Hack-Tack cried, "I am your one and only wife. Put that woman back into the pot right now." Mr. Hack-Tack yelled, "No. If I put her back into the pot, we will not have 2 women, but 3. 1 wife is enough for me." He backed away from his angry wife and tripped and fell head first into the pot himself.
Oh, no.
Both Mrs. Hack-Tacks rushed over to rescue him. Each grasped an ankle, and together they pulled him out. There were 2 more legs in the pot, so they pulled out the other Mr. Hack-Tack, too. Just what use does one Mr. Hack-Tack have for another? Mr. Hack-Tack cried angrily. This pot is not as wonderful as we thought it to be. Now even our troubles are beginning to double. But his wife had been thinking while he was yelling. "Calm down," she said. "It's good that the other Mrs. Hack-Tack has her own Mr. Hack-Tack. Perhaps we'll become the best of friends. After all, we are so alike. He will be a brother to you, and she a sister to me. With our pot, we can make 2 of everything. So there will be plenty to go around." And that was what they did. The Hack-Tacks built 2 fine new homes. Each house had identical teapots, rice bowls, silk embroideries, and bamboo furniture. From the outside, the houses looked exactly alike, but there was one difference. Hidden in one house was a big brass pot. Of course, they were always careful not to fall into it again. The new Hack-Tacks and the old Hack-Tacks did become good friends. The neighbors thought that the Hack-Tacks had grown so rich that they decided to have 2 of everything. Even themselves.
Wow, that was terrific. And everything turned out okay, huh?
I guess so. But I don't know, Keno. I don't think I would want 2 of everything. I think you were right. It would get too confusing.
Yeah, come to think of it, it'd be pretty weird if there were 2 of me. Maybe I'd only get half as much pizza. That'd be terrible.
And other people wouldn't know who they were talking to, the first you or the second you.
Hey, yeah. And maybe I wouldn't know either because I wouldn't know which me I was, the first me or the second me. Yikes. This is giving me a headache already.
See, Keno, you were right. It's too confusing.
Oh, it sure is. But, you know, I think both of the stories that we've read so far show you how important it is to have someone special, a special friend or a special person to be with. And for the owl babies, it was their mom.
Right, and for Mr. and Mrs. Hack-Tack, it was each other.
And I have my mom and dad and all my friends here, too.
You sure do. And now here's a story about a little bird named Choco who didn't have a mom and tried to find himself one. Now, our friend Patricia is going to read it to us, so why don't we drop in on her now, okay?
You bet. Hey, we're on our way.
We have about a half an hour left.
Let's read the book.
You want to read a book? Okay. Here it is. Look, it's called A Mother for Choco, and it's by Keiko Kaza. Can you say that?
Keiko Kaza.
That's right. Okay. Choco was a little bird who lived all alone. He wished he had a mother, but who could his mother be? One day, he set off to find her. First, Choco met Mrs. Giraffe.
Oh, Mrs. Giraffe, he cried. You are yellow, just like me. Are you my mother?
I'm sorry, sighed Mrs. Giraffe, but I don't have wings like you. Next, Choco met Mrs. Penguin.
Oh, Mrs. Penguin, he cried. You have wings just like me. Are you my mother?
I'm sorry, sighed Mrs. Penguin, but I don't have big round cheeks like you. Then Choco met Mrs. Walrus.
Oh, Mrs. Walrus, he cried. You have big round cheeks just like me. Are you my mother?
Now look, grumped Mrs. Walrus. I don't have striped feet like you, so don't bother me. No matter where Choco searched, he couldn't find a mother who looked just like him. When Choco saw Mrs. Bear picking apples, he knew that she couldn't be his mother. Mrs. Bear didn't look like him at all. Choco was so sad that he started to cry.
Mommy, Mommy, I need a mommy.
Mrs. Bear came running to see what was the matter. As she listened to Choco's story, she sighed, "Oh, dear. Well, if you had a mommy, what would she do?"
Oh, I'm sure that she would hold me, sobbed Choco.
Like this? Asked Mrs. Bear, and she held Choco very tight.
Yes, and I'm sure that she would kiss me too, said Choco.
Like this? Asked Mrs. Bear, and she lifted Choco up, and she gave him a big kiss.
Yes, and I'm sure that she would sing and dance with me to cheer me up, said Choco.
Like
Look,
this?
there's back on the wind.
Yes, and they're singing and dancing together. When they stopped to rest, Mrs. Bear turned to Choco and said, "Choco, maybe I could be your mother."
You? Choco cried. But you aren't yellow, and you don't have wings or big round cheeks or striped feet like me.
My goodness, said Mrs. Bear, that would make me look very funny. Choco thought it was funny, too. Well, said Mrs. Bear, my other children are waiting for me at home. Why don't you join us for apple pie, Choco? Apple pie sounded wonderful to Choco, so off they went. When they arrived, Mrs. Bear's other children rushed out to greet her. Choco, said Mrs. Bear, meet Hippie, Allie, and Piggy. I am their mother, too. The sweet smell of apple pie and the sound of laughter soon filled Mrs. Bear's home. After their delicious treat, Mrs. Bear gave all her children a big, warm hug. And Choco was very happy that his new mommy looked just the way she did. What do you think?
That was a good book.
You like it?
Yeah.
Yeah? What's your favorite part?
Let me show you.
Okay.
The bear part.
The bear part?
All the bear parts.
All the bear parts.
Yep.
It's
That's
nice when Mrs. Bear turns up in his life, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, boy, that was a great story. You know, that Mother Bear was a great mom to a bird and a hippopotamus and a pig and even to an alligator.
Well, I think the most important thing a mother does is love you. Don't you, Kino?
Yeah, I know my mom loves me, and I guess I love her, too.
What? What was that, Kino?
Oh, I love her. I do. And my dad, too.
Of course you do. And you know what? I think your Aunt Isabel loves you, too. And she'll make a wonderful mother until your own mother gets back.
Yep. And her oatmeal cookies are awesome.
Well, should we tell everyone about our story picks for this week?
Oh, yeah, sure, Lucy. I'll tell you what. You start, and I'll finish.
Okay. I'd like to recommend a book I bought for my daughter, Susanna, so she could read it to her daughter, Hannah. That makes Hannah my granddaughter. The book is called This Quiet Lady, and it's about a little girl who discovers that her mother was once a little girl, too.
Oh, and Lucy, I found a book I want to read with my mom when she gets back. Maybe we'll even cuddle up for this one. It's called On Mother's Lap. It's one of my favorite places when I was little, of course.
Oh, that's a wonderful book, Kino. Well, thank you, Kelly. And thank you, Elena, and all the rest of you. And until next time, when Kino's mom and dad will be back home safe and sound, and Kino will be stuffed with delicious mashed potatoes and oatmeal cookies.
Oh, don't forget the raisins.
Oh, delicious mashed potatoes and oatmeal cookies with raisins.
Keep a story in your heart. Bye, everybody.
Today's Storytime books are Owl Babies by Martin Waddell, illustrated by Patrick Benson. Two of Everything by Lily Toy Hong. A Mother for Choco by Keiko Kaza. This Quiet Lady by Charlotte Zolotow and Anita Lobel. And On Mother's Lap by Anne Herbert Scott, illustrated by Chloe Colson. You can find these and other books at your local library.
Major funding for Storytime is made possible by a grant from Helen and Peter Bing, so that families everywhere can share the joy of reading with their children. Additional funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, by the annual financial support from viewers like you, and by the National Endowment for Children's Educational Television. Storytime is a production of KCET Los Angeles.